Hi, welcome back to Psych Alchemy. And today I wanted to talk about the victim complex, what it is, and how to understand where that might be coming from in yourself or in others. So, I did a video earlier on the martyr complex, and you might kind of think they're the same thing, but they're actually quite different. So, the victim complex is kind of this mindset or this pattern of behavior that um, is always wrong. But the victim complex, people with victim complex don't necessarily. So the martyr is always giving and then resenting for giving. The victim will just be harmed by the environment and they don't necessarily give back. So someone could have both. They could be both a martyr and a victim. They kind of oscillate between. But there are people in victim mindsets that actually don't give to anyone. They have no interest in that. And so that's why I wanted to make a video specifically about that. So when someone is a perpetual victim in their life, they could potentially be working with the victim complex. So this is a defense mechanism, whether conscious or unconscious, and it's usually learned through the environment. I would say it's always learned through the environment. So you might ask, why would someone do that? So the first is that they don't have to take accountability or responsibility for their actions. So if someone didn't learn growing up and didn't have healthy models of people taking responsibility, they're going to be very averse and actually fearful of accountability. So let's say, for example, I grew up in a family where when we had arguments, so a healthy conflict goes something like this: I'm unhappy that you did this. Then the other person would hear what they're saying, potentially rephrase it. So if I'm hearing you correctly, this is what you're frustrated with. And then they would work together to try to remedy that. An unhealthy conflict would be like this: I don't like that you did this. And instead of me taking responsibility or accountability, I go back with, well, you always do this. Totally not dealing with the conflict and actually adding gasoline to the fire. And then once I go into, well, you always do this, then the other person goes, well, you do this. And then we're actually not having a successful conflict. We're just having a conflict that's going to go around and around. We're going to get escalated. And as we get escalated, we're going to say meaner and meaner things that we then regret. And so if someone grew up in an environment like that, they did not have healthy models of someone just taking responsibility. Like, even if, so let's say I'm in an argument with Mary, and maybe Mary has hurt me. When Mary's bringing up in this conversation about how I hurt her, I need to acknowledge and work with that. If I want to later have a conversation with Mary about how she hurts me, we can do that, but it can't happen right in that instance. So that's the first thing, is someone who doesn't know how to take accountability. And maybe you came from a very shaming environment where whatever their needs were shamed, and so they are desperately seeking someone to validate that they do have problems. The challenge is that when you have a deep wound, no matter how much validation you have, the wound still remains. You have to heal that wound. So the next thing can be secondary gains. So many people who are perpetual victims or in the victim complex, there is very much secondary gains. One example is people feel a lot of sympathy and give them attention. So often people who are have it the worst all of the time. So of course we have periods where things are really difficult and we have events that are really painful. But this is someone who they're always the worst. So like in treatment, it would be the person that tells me, my doctors and therapists say that I have the worst depression they've ever seen. That's not true. No one would tell you that. They might tell you that to make you shut up because you won't stop talking about how hard it is. But that's not true. Everyone's mental health is so different. No one has it the worst. But when we're in victim complex, we need to be the worst to be the best. So that's the secondary gain. If I'm the worst, if I'm helpless, I'm going to draw into my reality people who are fixers. usually martyrs. That's what we end up drawing in. And then they resent us because if you let go of the victim complex, you don't have a way to connect anymore. So you don't let go of the victim complex. But if I'm a martyr and I want to give so that you say I'm good enough, but you never get better, I'm going to then resent you. Because what we don't realize with relationships is they are transactions. So if I get my benefit from you getting better from my kind care, because I'm a martyr, and you won't get better, I'm going to resent you. And if you don't take my advice, so one thing that happens with people with victim complexes, is they're always asking for help and advice, but they never listen. And anything that someone says, they have a yes, but. Because they're not interested in actually moving forward. They're interested in maintaining the secondary gain of this power dynamic and also wanting this attention. So, and that can sometimes be an unconscious need. Sometimes people are not aware of that. Like maybe as I'm saying that, if you're having a really strong reaction, I'm touching on something that you should probably look at. If you're having like an emotionally reactive, like you want to leave a horrible comment, which is totally fine. I'm happy to have that. I'm touching on your truth, actually. That's why you're having such a strong reaction. Um, but there's also other unconscious needs, as for example, if I grew up in a household that didn't appreciate and maybe even shamed emotions, I have a deep unconscious need to be validated. But again, like I said earlier, no amount of validation, because it's not coming from the right person. So if it was growing up or a past relationship, no matter who tells me that I'm correct or I am the perpetual victim or whatever the case is, it's never going to satiate this deep wound because I needed it from the person that I actually needed it from. I needed the parent to tell me it's okay to feel that way. I hear what you're saying, and no amount of people doing that is going to fix that for me. And then the last piece, and of course there's lots of pieces, is that when we're a victim, we never have to take risks. We never have to actually fail because it makes us inactive. We never have to take action on our lives. We just stay in this kind of filthy bathwater for the rest of our lives. So all of those pieces are kind of what make the victim complex. I don't feel like I need to really explain what the victim complex is, but I think it is helpful to understand what drives that. And if you find yourself in those places, it's really helpful to seek appropriate help because oftentimes when we're in that victim complex, you need a therapist that's very strong, that will actually challenge you. Many therapists struggle with challenging and they actually don't help their clients because some clients need someone to push back. Oftentimes, people with victim complex, their victimhood, if anyone challenges it, you see they're not victim. They stop being a victim and become very reactive because they weren't a victim to begin with. They might have had experiences that victimized them, and in those experiences, they were a victim. But this whole mask or persona of being a victim is not true to their core reality. And so you see that once you push and a monster comes out because that's not who they are, but that's more their authentic self. This is a mask that they use for social exchange, and when you're starting to shed a light on it, it can be difficult. So it can be really important to find a therapist who will challenge you, who isn't afraid of your reactiveness, who isn't afraid of your resistance. So I hope that's helpful, and I wish you well this week.